Okay, well, I don't want to make anyone wait all day for other participants, so if folks join in, that's totally fine. So I think we will get started. If folks don't mind, thank you so much for sharing why you're here and why you're interested, and thank you so much for joining us today. If you don't mind, please put yourself on mute so that as we go forward, we can sort of minimize interruptions. There will be times for questions, and you can either take yourself off mute, or you can put them in the group chat and I'll help moderate that. So I'd like to sort of begin by closing the door so it's a little quieter. Hold on 2 seconds. Sorry about that. I'd love to begin by introducing Brooke Rouse. Brooke Rouse is the Executive Director of the St. Lawrence Chamber of Commerce. They also serve as the tourism promotion agent for St. Lawrence County. She studied right here in the North Country at St. Lawrence University, but then also received her master's degree in tourism and hospitality management from the University of the West Indies in Barbados. She worked as a business advisor at the SUNY Canton Small Business Development Center before she was the executive director at the county chamber. She does a million other things too. So she also, which is really relevant to this, her and her husband opened the 24 East Main Street Bed and Breakfast in Canton in 2008. She has 2 little ones, and she, in her spare time, which I'm not sure exists, but she claims that she has spare time, she also opened the Grass River Outfitters shop and loves spending time doing that business as well. So we're so glad to have you here today, Brooke, sharing your insights and stories with us about this industry and how folks might want to get involved or explore their options. Brooke had done a longer version of this program, so we're doing sort of a smaller condensed version to see if there's enough interest to rehash the longer version and connect people with available opportunities. So with that, thank you so much for joining us, Brooke, and the floor is all yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Danny, and hello to everyone. I'm excited to be here to talk about something I'm very passionate about. And also just wanted to note that I no longer really work at our bed and breakfast with all those other things. So I don't want you to think that you can do all of these things and run a proper lodging business. So just wanted to note that. So we're going to get right into it. As Danny said, I did a 5-week course a few years ago that really got into quite some depth as far as different things that are required to own and operate a B&B, but we're going to do a bit of a surface level here today. So I always like to start out with the importance of lodging in a destination. A destination really needs everything that a visitor might be interested in order to be successful. So some of the major elements of any destination would be attractions, lodging, dining, transportation, and other infrastructure such as sidewalks and roads and proper sewage and water and things like that as well. And it's important to keep in mind that if your property is not in an existing destination, that you need to think about making the property a destination on its own. We have a lot of emerging destinations in the North Country also, so being a part of that is also an exciting opportunity. So more specifically to lodging, as you probably all know, there's a variety of lodging options, and it's important for any destination that there are a variety of lodging options. People have different interests and needs, and they like to have options. It's a good way to boost the destination and help the destination grow. Typically, you need a certain number of rooms or options in order to host events and conferences, attract other business, etc. So having that variety is really important to the destination overall. Oops, I just realized I didn't click. There's that visual. So just to quickly go over the different types of lodging, often people use these words interchangeably, and they can to some degree, but it's important that, especially for marketing purposes, that you're clear about who you are and what you're doing so that your guest understands that before they get there, when they book, all of that. And it also helps you understand what you're doing. So a bed and breakfast is typically a private home. The owner or manager typically occupies the property for overnight accommodation, and it includes a morning meal for several people. So it can be small, 2 to 4 rooms, up to many more rooms, but typically it's kind of under 6 rooms. A guest house has private rooms or quarters without expectation of a morning meal, and typically the owner or manager is also in residence. So sometimes it's just more of separate quarters without a meal necessarily. An inn or boutique hotel can be small, 5 rooms, or up to 20 rooms or more. That's the numbers really aren't that important, but it typically assumes that other meals are being served and are available to public or non-guests, and an owner or manager is on site. So again, you might be able to go get dinner at an inn that exists in your community, or if you're opening an inn or a boutique hotel, you could include that option. Vacation rentals are private homes for guests that almost always don't have the owner or manager in residence or on site. The guests have access to the kitchen, the grounds, etc. Housekeeping and linens may or may not be provided. And then a motel is a roadside hotel, typically having the rooms arranged in a low building with parking directly outside with an owner or manager on site. And I should add, if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box throughout, and Danny can stop me at whatever point, and we'll have some time at the end also to answer questions. But if you want to type them in while you're thinking of them, then we can address them whenever it works. So a lot of you are here today to learn more about the different models or to see if this is something that's right for you. So just a couple of points and questions you want to consider. So throughout this, we'll look a little bit at the personal and professional goals, lifestyle choices, property options, and availability of your time to operate the business. You can really make these type of lodging establishments whatever you want and whatever your vision is, as long as your marketing explains exactly that, so that what you deliver is what the guests expect when they're booking. Will you plan to own and manage the day-to-day of the business, or are you planning to buy something and then hire management and other folks to run it for you and kind of be a bit more absent or away or seasonal or whatever the case may be? Just things to think about. Other things are the skills and abilities that you have that will be beneficial to the business. Again, that might determine the type of lodging model you want to go after. And then what skills and abilities are you lacking that you'd need to achieve your goals? And that's where hiring or contracting professionals might come in. And that might be just for cleaning, or it might be to do your bookkeeping. But it's important to think about that going into the business. Might determine the scale of your business or the model of your business. Couple different options when it comes to starting a new venture. Are you going to build or renovate a property to be a lodging property? Potentially it's your existing home that you're just going to start inviting guests, or potentially it's your existing home or a property you buy that you want to upgrade bathrooms or expand bedrooms to be more accommodating to guests, or you might want to build from scratch for this purpose. Or are you going to purchase an existing and established business? You may also do renovations to that, but if it's an existing business, that comes with a lot of other elements to the business. So it's very important to think about whether or not owning or managing a lodging establishment is right for you. I always say, especially in the case of a B&B, that it's not a job, it's really a lifestyle. So you have to be ready for that and interested in that. And some people get into this with a vision and a dream and don't really realize what it means. So these are just a couple of questions that I think are really important to think about before you get into it, or it might help you define, again, the type of lodging establishment that you want, because these questions can be fulfilled on different levels based on the models that we talked about earlier. So, do you enjoy talking to strangers? That's a big part of this business. How do you feel about people with different lifestyles, customs, religions, and philosophies? Obviously, you have to be open to all kinds of people staying with you and be mindful of discrimination and being really open and accepting to a variety of people. Are you comfortable with strangers in your house or your space? So again, that would be based on the type of lodging that you are going into. And it may just be sharing a yard or sharing a bathroom or a kitchen or whatever the case may be. So again, that kind of goes along a large scale. Will your family be living on the property, and are you able to segregate family versus guest space on the property? Again, an important thing to think about when you're looking at properties to purchase or doing renovations. And what are your needs for privacy and privacy for your family? Again, it's important to think about with the layout of the property that you choose or build, and also how much privacy you like, and some other members of your family may have different wishes in that department. Let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. We want to make sure there's time for questions too. So a really big part of small lodging is the personal touch, being able to provide insider information and recommendations, casual conversations that are really personalized to individual guest interests, the close relationships with local businesses that you have that insider knowledge to refer to your guests, the ability to provide local maps, guides, materials, and really serve as an ambassador for your community and your region. And typically, these smaller establishments really enjoy providing food and featuring local food as well. So it's just part of typically what a small scale lodging establishment looks like. So into the more specific things that are important if you're looking at property, building, purchasing, whatever the case may be, that you just want to keep in mind as you're going into it. So if you're looking at a new or existing property, it's important to make sure that the utilities are licensed, that there's enough supply of water and sewage. That's certainly an issue that you want to make sure is going to be able to support the amount of people that you're going to have on the property. You want to be looking at on-street and off-street parking based on the number of guests that you intend to have, and the lighting and passage with luggage as well. You want to check your sidewalks, parking areas, and steps to make sure they're all clear and safe. So this is a little bit specific, but the point is that if you're looking again at building or purchasing, parking is typically a big thing with zoning as well. There are very specific rules to that. So some permitting and regulations, again, that you want to look into before building or opening or purchasing a property. You want to make 100% certain that operating the type of lodging you're looking at is permitted in that zone. So you want to contact your local code enforcement, even if you're just looking at a few different properties, and make sure that the type of lodging is permitted. You know, some of the things that we've seen are different between villages and towns. Some determine or identify that you have to be owner occupied, for example, in a residential area. There are local laws that are typically specific about lighting, the number of rooms and guests that you have, again, the space for parking, the size and content of signage, and fire inspections. So again, you might have a vision, you might purchase a property and then find out that, oh, this is a nice property, you can have guests there, but you can't put a sign up. So that might be an important determining factor. And sometimes a letter to the abutting property owners is required if you need a variance or to establish a new use for the property. Another thing that's good to think about before you open or as you're starting to kind of put your business plan together is that you really know your market and that you know your product. It's going to be very specific to the location in the community or the town, but also potentially very specific to the exact property that you're looking to build or buy or renovate. So you want to look very closely at the customer profile that would be potential customers. You want to have a good understanding of where they're coming from, why they're coming to your destination, how long they're typically going to stay. Is it more of a one-night stay kind of place, or are people looking for week-long stays? Are you getting a lot of first-time, one-time visitors or repeat customers? How, when, and where they found out about your B&B business. So that would be once you're open. You always want to be mindful of that so you can pay attention to your return on investment for marketing. Number of people in the party. If it's typically families that are visiting you, then you want to make sure that your rooms and your space are set up to accommodate that. Or if it's mostly couples or whatever the case may be, that's an important part of the layout of your property. The type of party, if you're attracting an elderly market, or if you're attracting, say, anglers or snowmobilers or horseback riders or whatever the case may be, that may also provide good insight for how you design your property, thinking about things like accessibility or thinking about things like storage for certain activities of sporting equipment, things like that. And then it's good to understand, and this is more once you open, why they chose your type of lodging over other options. That helps you really get a better understanding of who your specific market is. It's not necessarily a market to a specific destination, but why are they choosing your B&B over a hotel, or why are they choosing your vacation rental over a motel? Those are important things to get an understanding of, which is more anecdotal as you go along. So typically the information is collected through observation. You can also have a more formal process of kind of having guest registration cards or a checkout survey after people leave that you could email. But it can certainly help you understand your customer, understand how you can better cater to them and better market to them as well. Competitor analysis is also very important for anyone who's done business planning. This is an important part of your business plan. As I said in the beginning, I really truly believe that it's important to have a number of lodging options and that all of those lodging folks are really working together to refer between one place and the other. The ultimate goal is to make sure that people are staying in your destination. You don't want them traveling 40 minutes away to stay somewhere else because you don't have a room. So being very aware of what your competitors or partners have is important to making the destination stronger. So doing this analysis as you're preparing to open or purchase your property is important for many reasons. Having a good understanding of what they offer, what their room prices are, and who their target markets are, so that you can identify maybe where there's a gap in lodging or what's working and needs more rooms in that area. But certainly you want to remain competitive in that market. And again, this influences your marketing strategy as well. Key selling point or unique selling point is important, again, as you're thinking about your vision for your location, and then as you're building out your business plan, and certainly, again, in how you market your property. So the key selling point or unique selling point, USP, is what really differentiates your property from those competitors. Again, when you do that analysis, you'll be able to better see where you fit in. And that will help you really consider what the wants and needs are of the specific guests that you might have there. So it's good to think about this in two different ways. There are tangible aspects that would be more to your physical property, the product and services that you're offering, the policies and activities offered. So for example, your physical property, you may have private bathrooms with each room. You may be all on one level, like we talked about with a motel. You may offer spa treatments or eggs off of your own property. Those are some of the unique selling points of any property. When you're talking about policies, those might be things like, are you dog friendly? That's where I included that picture. That's a big yes or no in the lodging industry. Some people clearly are looking for places that are dog friendly, but when you're developing your property and what your vision is, that's definitely a thing to think about, maybe in how you lay things out or what you're going to offer, and it certainly needs to be very clear on your website before you open. Some places might also have activities, so you might offer excursions or garden tours or, again, spa treatment or something like that. So those are more tangible. The intangible pieces are more specific to things you can't put your hands on, obviously. So the attitude and hospitality that you convey to guests, the mood and atmosphere are things that kind of generate a feeling for your guests. And that is something that will differentiate you from your competition. And you'll be able to express that through your website and your marketing. And then certainly when people are there and then write reviews, you want them to have a certain feel and a certain type of experience. And that's going to lend to that. One of the things that I think goes across both tangible and intangible is just the layout and decor of your place. So you can see this gentleman here allows dogs and has a certain look to his place that may or may not appeal to some people. So it's just important, again, to think about your market, think about your vision, and just be very clear through your marketing so that people get what they expect when they arrive. Were there any questions on what I've covered so far? Danny, were there any questions?
Nope, not yet. If anybody has any questions and would like to type them in, please feel free to do so, or you can unmute yourself if you have a question now.
All right, looks good. We'll keep moving along. So into a bit of planning, finances, and investment. Again, very important to be considering no matter what your plan is for buying, renovating, or buying an established business. So some of the recommendations are to stay in the property as a guest before it's known that you're interested in buying it. You can see where this might be beneficial. You can really get a sense of what it's really like for a guest, what the reputation is, what the highs and lows might be, challenges and opportunities with the property. And that way, when you take the next step of letting it be known that you're interested in buying, you will have had that personal experience that they may not disclose in your purchasing process. So if you do have the opportunity to do that kind of as a secret shopper, it's a really good idea. You want to verify all the information once you get it from the owner to the best of your ability. Get their information, cross-check that with other people in the community or the industry to make sure it's as accurate as what's being presented. Certainly want to have an inspection done before you agree on a price. You want to find out if the property is part of any legal conflict or if it has any financial liens. A lot of this is common for any property purchase, but it's important just to remind people. Sometimes you get excited about a property or excited about a business opportunity and you forget some of these things. You want to find out why the owner is interested in selling. Again, they might sugarcoat that a little bit, but if you can get down to real reasons there, it can be helpful. You want to know how long the current owner has been there and potentially, what the former owner timeline looked like. Sometimes a reputation or reviews can be based on a certain ownership. And so, a current owner may have done a lot of work investing in the property, investing in the reputation. And so the former situation may not be relevant. or, some things may come up when you're looking at that. It's always good, again, even though you might be excited about one property, it's a really good idea to look at multiple properties just so that you get a sense of what kind of the options are, and before jumping into the investment and the personal kind of lifestyle investment, that you have a really good idea of the pros and cons and what you're looking for and what you want to do. If you can get your hands on or require the occupancy records, that will really help you understand the number of guests from month to month, which will help you plan for cash flow and obviously all the financial planning. You want to review the existing expenditures and ensure the income is higher, obviously. You essentially want to get as much financial information as possible. You want to compare the room rates that they're currently promoting to the competitors. Perhaps they're underpriced, overpriced, or equal. I think that pricing for lodging, I always encourage people, underpricing is not necessarily the best business strategy. So don't jump to that right away, but just get a sense of, based on what your property is, what you're offering, if it's properly priced, and if that has any implications on the current success of the business. You will want to get the last 3 years of financial statements and review them with a CPA to really get a good understanding of what the income and expenses are, as well as any challenges or investments that have been made in the business. Any financing institution is going to require this if you're purchasing an existing business. So this is going to be a key piece. If they're not willing to release this information, you might have some challenges getting financing. And you might have some other questions too if they're not releasing this information. And sometimes they can explain whatever, if it's not picture perfect, they can explain it. And if you're able to think about and create strategies to improve the situation, then poor financial statements are not necessarily a make or break. But in your business plan, you can explain how you recognize those weaknesses and how you plan to improve on them. You also want to make sure the business has been following all of the state requirements so that you're not fined or delayed with permitting or proceeding with anything in the transition. You want to make sure license and permits also are in place, and understand the timeline for transfer. So for example, if there's currently a bar in the inn or the motel, if that liquor license needs to change hands, what's involved with that. You want to ensure that all the taxes have been paid and are current, so you're not stuck with that or delayed by that. You want to check if the property is insured and for how much. Calculate the amount of coverage and premiums. This is important in your financial planning, as well as just the safety and security of what might happen before you become the owner and have your own insurance. You want to review all supplier and vendor contracts for the expiration dates, renewal terms, and payment amounts. That will give you an idea of if you're bound to any of these vendors, or if you're free from that. It may have financial implications, or it may have implications on, again, your vision for what you're trying to provide. That could be anything from laundry service to food contracts to marketing, anything like that.
Brooke, is now a good time? We do have one question.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you conduct a needs assessment for the area? Patty would like to know.
There are a couple of different ways to do it. I'm not a specialist in that. However, we are about to start a tourism destination area plan for several communities in St. Lawrence County. That's one tool that exists as a workbook that any community could pursue or hire a consultant to take you through. But that's a current process that was developed specifically in the North Country for the North Country as part of the Regional Economic Development Council. And it essentially is a needs assessment of what exists, what doesn't, what is needed. And that's one specific example that I'm happy to share with anybody. If Danny, you can connect us, or my contact information will be at the end, and I can share that workbook. It's a public document. And then I can talk to you about what the options are for kind of proceeding with that planning process. I'm sure there are a number of tools out there, but that's just something that was created in the Regional Economic Council, Development Council, and they're looking at using that, and communities who complete that kind of as a bonus points for applications.
So is that funded through the council annual grant program?
The Tourism Destination Area Workbook was created maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I believe they got funding through one of the pools, but then they created the workbook. So it's essentially available to anybody to do. We got a grant to serve as the consultant for the communities here through a New York C grant. So because it's the development of a planning process, there are a number of different funding opportunities to have it done. And it can be done pretty surface level. I mean, it's a very user-friendly workbook that you could essentially sit down and fill out on your own. And then we're doing public sessions, and we're gonna have a committee, and it's gonna be more in depth, and we're gonna beef it up with research and things like that. But it can be pretty basic. And then it would be something that in your CFA application, you could include that this lodging project was identified as a need in the tourism destination area plan. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Any other questions on that? All right. We'll move along with more money matters. So your initial investment and startup expenses, again, obviously you want to be thinking about not just the property on its own, but everything else that needs to be considered when you're looking for financing and when you're looking to determine if the business is viable. So capital equipment and fixtures, renovations, furniture, kitchen supplies, linens, things like that. Your initial startup expenses, those would be the professional fees, cleaning supplies, insurance, deposits, website marketing. So those, some of those are one-time investments or annual investments, but they're not ongoing. And then we always recommend, and your funding agent would also recommend, that you have a good amount of working capital built into your startup expenses. So depending on your taste for risk, you could plan for anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. Again, if you're planning on a phased expansion or a phased kind of renovation, that might have implications on how much working capital that you need to plan for. Or say if you're planning to open and then kind of have it managed by others, and in a year and 6 months you're planning to move to the property and run it full time, you would want to plan for that additional working capital for staffing, for example. And one of the tips we give really for anybody starting any type of business is to register a DBA with your county clerk and get a bank account set up as soon as possible, put in a starting balance, and then start running all the expenses through that account, even from the time essentially that you start spending money on this. So that might be anything from paying an accountant to review those financials or whatever the case may be. It just helps keep all of your investments and business expenses in one spot from the get-go, even if that's kind of trickling along for a couple of years as you're even doing the research on the business. Other expenses to think about would be your variable expenses. So those would be your costs associated with renting a room. Food and cleaning supplies, the extras like soap and chocolates, anything that might be specific to someone staying in a room. Staffing and utilities can be included as both fixed and variable. You know, your utilities, you might get an idea of what your monthly utilities are going to be. You're not necessarily going to say every guest is $2.30 in water bills or whatever. Staffing, likewise, with small scale lodging, typically the way we think about it is if you have one guest, you might as well have the whole place filled up because you have to either yourself be there or you have to staff it in a very similar way. Fixed expenses are those associated with the business, whether you rent a room or not. Things like your mortgage or your rent, your insurance, taxes, plowing and landscaping, website marketing, your reservation system, and again, staff and utilities. So again, it's really important to think about both of those things and include them in your financial planning. So how are you going to fund this venture? Typically, any funding entity is going to be looking for these things. They're going to want a business plan and financial projections. They're going to want those 3 years of tax returns from the business if you're purchasing an existing establishment. They're going to want your income statement or anybody involved if it's a partnership or a multi-owner structure. They're going to want to see the income statement. Letters of reference are not always required, but typically a good thing to include. Your credit will certainly be checked and will help determine whether or not they're going to lend to you and or what interest rate is determined. They also are going to, very importantly, want to know what you're investing personally in the business. So they want to see that you have skin in the game with this venture. Lodging is typically seen as high risk, and so some entities won't even touch lodging. They won't even have the conversation. Others will want you to have a larger percentage of the total project. And again, this is where you want to look at the total project. It's not just purchasing the property, it's purchasing the property, doing the renovations, doing whatever upgrades, purchasing all that startup, furniture and linens and marketing and all of that. So it's good to look at it as a total project so that you're properly financed to start. We see a lot of times that people will just get financing to purchase the building and don't include everything else. And then they're strapped and have to cut corners, or the opening is delayed, or from the start, they open the business undercapitalized and they're always struggling, or they have to put things on credit cards and then deal with the payments and interest rates associated with that. So it's a really good, if you can, have a really good idea of what the total project would be to open, and then that 6 months to 3 years, and what amount of money that you need in total to have a successful and viable business. And then they will always want to see collateral. Again, it's a high risk business, so they're going to be looking at what can you give if for some reason you're unable to pay, what collateral exists with the current building or property. If they were to say, sorry, we have to take your motel back and then we're going to try to sell it to get our money back. Or sometimes it's your personal collateral as well, a car or another house or something like that. So those are all things that are going to be looked at. You can start getting organized with them now. Or if you're planning further down the line, 3 years or 5 years, you can start working on improving your credit, or whatever the case may be. There are a number of financing options. These are typically all through a bank, these ones. So there are SBA guaranteed loans, USDA guaranteed loans. Again, because the lodging options are unique. It might be your own residence, or it might be a very clearly commercial property. You can potentially get a home mortgage or a commercial mortgage, a construction loan, a business loan, or a line of credit. And it may be very common for you to have multiple sources of this funding to make your project work. There are also a number of small business loan programs in the North Country. There may be additional ones, but these are some that that we know about offhand, and especially in St. Lawrence County, and then some that cover the region. These are loan programs that do lend for lodging. So that's an important piece. So the AEDC, or the Adirondack Economic Development Corporation, is based in Saranac and covers the whole North Country region. Our Chamber of Commerce has a loan fund that was a USDA loan fund, revolving loan fund, and we do lend to lodging. North Country Alliance as well, and DANK has a tourism loan fund. Again, that's very specific to lodging and attractions and things like that, up to I think $250,000. And then here at St. Lawrence County IDA, and probably IDAs across the county or the region, have funds that may or may not be applicable to lodging. Sometimes they're tight on that, but they may have other business loan funds that you could use as part of your kind of total project package. There are also a number of business development resources in the North Country. They can help with business planning. They can help with those financial projections. They can help with the actual applications and then serve as a liaison with the various lending institutions. They can help with marketing plans. They can help with any technical assistance and training. They can help with buying and selling a business, as well as putting together your vision for customer service. So some of them are listed here. SUNY Canton SBDC. There's also the Canton SBDC is also overseeing the Clinton Community College SBDC. The one I left off, there's also an SBDC in Watertown. They're all over the state, and that's free counseling. Again, the AEDC provides some technical assistance. Chambers of Commerce sometimes have training and resources, and then local economic development, IDAs, planning departments, and then I left off ANCA. But ANCA is a great resource, especially with this project and the Center for Business and Transition, for connecting people and connecting with additional, more specific resources. And that is my quick breeze through of kind of an overview of especially things that you'd be interested in knowing or thinking about as you're going into a potential lodging business. And then, as Danny said, I did an in-depth program that got into specifics on a lot of these areas. And I'll just note, Russ chimed in that Franklin County LDC also has a loan program for anyone in Franklin County. Are there any questions now before Danny jumps into her piece?
I don't see any in the chat yet, Brooke. If anybody has any, please feel free to chime in. I just want to add one just quick thing for anybody who may not know. An IDA is an industrial development agency, and it's a little bit of a misnomer. It might sound like you need to be in manufacturing or something like that, but most counties in the North Country have an active IDA that's able to help with financing for small businesses throughout our county, and gap financing and things like that. So if you have questions about any of those IDAs, I'll have my stuff up at the end. So that's what that stands for. Industrial Development Agencies. And then the other acronym was DANK, which is the Development Authority of the North Country, and also has loan funds, as Brooke mentioned.
There's also the Workforce Development Corp, which can provide training for staffing and technical training, funding for those things. So it's another resource. A lot of resources.
Ooh, we got a question. Can you speak to the impact of Airbnb on the lodging market in the North Country?
Yeah, great question. So I don't have specific statistics. We're kind of all following Airbnb and the growth of Airbnb across the North Country, especially. We've seen implications on housing markets and housing for staff in some of these destinations. So maybe you've been following a little bit of that, especially in Lake Placid area. But as far as it impacts the lodging market in the North Country, it's not exactly clear. So just a couple of things. One is that so Airbnb is really a booking platform. And that's something that obviously they've done great branding, but it does kind of hurt the real bed and breakfast. But really what Airbnb is a booking platform. Some people are now calling B&Bs or vacation rentals or whatever's Airbnbs. So that's where kind of the brand gets confusing. So several bed and breakfasts or vacation rentals or potentially even motels are listing rooms on Airbnb as a booking platform, just like Expedia or TripAdvisor or any of those others. But Airbnb is an international marketplace. It's kind of a younger way of traveling these days. They've enhanced it with experiences and all kinds of things. And a lot of people are using it to look for vacation rentals. So I myself often use Airbnb if I'm looking to rent a house somewhere because I have family and friends and I want 4 rooms and I want my own kitchen and whatever. That's kind of how it started out. But now bed and breakfasts are also listing on there to make sure that they have that exposure in that market essentially. So I might be looking for a full house and then I see a bed and breakfast with a room listed and say, oh, that would fit my needs perfectly. I'm going to book that. So it's a kind of an important place to be, just like some entities might look at Expedia or TripAdvisor, those kind of reservation platforms as well. So that's one piece of it. The other impact it's having on the North Country lodging market is this confusion of the brand. So people will say, oh, I'm opening an Airbnb, or I'm staying in an Airbnb, or I'm going to book at your bed and breakfast, and the expectation is not clear. So someone might say, oh, I've always loved staying in bed and breakfast. I'm going to book an Airbnb. And then they get there and there's no one on site. There's no breakfast. There's no human interaction. There's nobody there to help tell you where to grab dinner, where your local hikes are. So people who are expecting that from a bed and breakfast typically are not going to get that from an Airbnb vacation rental, if that makes sense. The other thing that we're seeing comes with tax issues as far as people who own real bed and breakfasts or motels or whatever. We pay staffing, we pay marketing, we pay insurance, we pay to be a part of chambers and associations and things like that. We have a lot of fixed and variable costs to run a real bed and breakfast. And then essentially your neighbor can do very similar right next door and not have those expenses, be able to therefore offer a lower price and kind of cut you out of the market. Some communities are trying to get on top of that. Some counties have established agreements with Airbnb so that they can still collect occupancy tax. So that's a good thing. And then some communities are also working it into their zoning as far as whether or not you can have a B&B essentially that's not owner occupied in certain zones, or if there are certain regulations as far as fire code and things like that, if you're essentially going to rent your property to guests and not be there, or even if you are going to be there. But currently people are still figuring that out. I would like to see people meaning local governments be a bit more proactive about that, not only to protect visitors coming to their area, but also to protect the existing lodging market. So it's kind of a very long answer, but it's certainly a hot topic in the industry.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have any questions before we move on to the next part of the program? Or Russ, do you have any comments on the Airbnb situation as you work in that sphere quite a bit? Russ from the Franklin County IDA. All right. Well, thank you so much, Brooke, for your time. She's going to continue to be on with us. So if you have some questions that sort of bubble up as we move forward and still want to ask them, she'll be around at the end, and we'll be able to continue to answer them. But we're going to switch over to my screen here. So bear with me for just a moment. All right. Can at least one person confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Great. So my name is Danny Delaney. I am with the Adirondack North Country Association, ANCA. So we help to grow the new economy in the North Country, and we do that in a variety of ways. I'm going to quickly sort of scroll through a little bit about the program and why we wanted to support this particular webinar, but I'll quickly go into that. So we work in the new economy in a variety of different ways. We work with small businesses, we work in clean energy, we work in value-added foods and help artisans. But over the last couple of years, we've been thoroughly researching and now have launched a program focused on businesses in transition. So retiring business owners is a huge thing, not only in our area, but also nationally. But in our area, after working to develop a regional economic analysis, it looks as though we might be seeing somewhere between 10 and 16,000 business owners of the baby boomer generation who will be retiring out. And we really want to work in partnership with other organizations and committed individuals throughout the region to identify those business owners, help them develop a succession plan, and to connect them with possible entrepreneurs so that they can keep their lights on and they can move on to a new ownership in our communities. So we call it a center, the Center for Business in Transition, but really it's a dynamic partnership of regional organizations and individuals. Doesn't really have a particular home, but we have liaisons throughout the region. And we, like I said, provide matchmaking services, access to planning tools, and connection with existing resources and things that already are happening here, but making sure that we can get those out to a larger audience and to connect folks who are doing great things. So the slide here has a little bit of information about which of the organizations in our region have a community liaison in their office. So the Hamilton County IDA and Economic Development Office, Lewis County IDA, the Cornell Cooperative Extension Team, the County of Franklin Industrial Development Agency and Community Economic Development, Essex County IDA, St. Lawrence County Chamber of Commerce, and our SBDC offices, as well as the Ticonderoga Area Chamber of Commerce. On top of that, so they all have like a person who's really dedicated to this and proportioned a number of hours per month to focus on this topic, but over 50 different area organizations are supporting and continuing to work with the Center for Business and Transition towards this goal. So we're obviously always looking for business owners who are looking to retire, but here the audience might be more interested. If you are an aspiring entrepreneur looking to purchase an existing business, start on a new career path, or find out about employee ownership models and opportunities, we're a great first place to start. So we can sit down with you, talk about available opportunities. We can listen to the kinds of things that you're looking for and start trying to find retiring business owners in that area that might be a good fit for you. One of the things that happens a lot is that retiring business owners may not be ready to make their plans public to retire for a lot of different reasons. They might not want somebody to come think that they're going to have a fire sale, or they want to make sure that they keep their guests or their clients, but those clients are really sort of there because of the owner. So they don't want to lose their clients before they're really ready to retire. So that might keep them from wanting to talk about their business transition super publicly. So one opportunity that we allow for is folks to sort of talk about it a little more anonymously as they get their ducks in a row, as they figure out, what's their transition plan, how much should their business be worth. As they're getting all of those things in place, we can still talk to aspiring entrepreneurs and say, hey, there is somebody kind of looking somewhere in the North Country. They have a hotel, they have a restaurant, has this many employees, it's located on a lake, but without having to say that it's Joe's Chicken Shack on 13th Lake, right? Like we can talk about things a little bit anonymously and make some connections without having to tell people publicly that something is available before they're ready. So we've been doing a number of workshops, obviously including this one, but we also have sort of a larger format workshop series throughout the region. All of these are available online, and I will send them as they finish up. I will send them to you after this if you're interested in any of these other topics, or if you want to sign up for any incoming ones. And what I thought might be a good use of our time is to talk a little bit about some of our available opportunities that are focused on lodging in our region. And I really tried to pull as many of the sort of smaller ones as possible. There are a few larger ones. And then there are some that I can't, like I said, I can't quite talk about yet. But if you wanted to reach out and you said, you know, I'm looking for a B&B or motel in this particular area, I might be able to sort of scrounge up some of those folks to be more public about it. And so I really like to sit down with business owners, but also aspiring entrepreneurs, and find out what their needs are and if we might be able to do a little bit of matchmaking. So we are really excited today to have Jerry Greer joining us from the Circle Court Motel to talk a little bit about the lodging facility that he owns, the Circle Court Motel, him and his wife. It is in Ticonderoga, and I had the pleasure to go down and see their motel recently, and also sit down and just learn about how they were able to raise their family in the North Country, how they're really integral parts of their community, and that they have a robust business and a beautiful home inside of the motel, and that it would be a really wonderful turnkey operation for somebody to be able to take over if they're interested. So I will turn it over to Jerry to talk a little bit about his experience. He'd like to share with us a little bit about, you know, the opportunity that he has and why it's been such a good place for them and their lives.
Hello. Yes, my name is Jerry Greer. I'm the owner of the Circle Court Motel here in Ticonderoga, New York. If you've been to the area, we are located on the traffic circle where Route 9N meets Montcalm Street, our main street here. My wife Barb and I have been here since 1989. We moved back, but my family really goes back 4 generations. My great grandparents bought this property back in 1910. Excuse me. They started a tourist home at the time back in 1917, which is that group, the people they were really running to were like your salespeople, your people coming to the local hospital to see family, that type of thing. It gradually grew over time as cars started to become more available. You got people doing more into the tourism. They started adding motel rooms. The last motel rooms added were in 1986. And then in 2006, we did our last major really renovations where we added a couple of rooms, really one like a one bedroom apartment and another an efficiency inside the house, along with our living quarters that are in there. We decided to move, we moved away. I worked for Alcoa and Eastman Kodak Company for many years. My parents were getting ready to retire, and we really wanted to raise our family here in this town. It just felt like the Adirondacks, the mountains, the lakes, everything that was here, the school system, but this was just a great place to raise a family. So in 1989, we decided to move back and take over the business. Over the period of time, we started to move our involvement from the day-to-day became less and less. When we first started back, we were intimately involved with, like I said, the day-to-day operations, the rentals and so forth. We even did some of the cleaning. Then we started moving out and I became a teacher in the Ticonderoga school system. My wife worked for the superintendent, and it became more and more that we were using our staffing in some of the day-to-day operations. We still maintain the management part of it. So really, as Brooke was saying, from a managing standpoint, you can have some people who are going to be involved in all the day-to-day, and others can work towards it being more of an investment. We've had some people look at it from the business from both standpoints. The most recent being looking at that they would do it strictly as an investment and even take our living quarters and use that as a rental as well, so that they wouldn't be on site. From an attraction standpoint, here in Ticonderoga, there's Fort Ticonderoga. There is Star Trek now. They just had William Shatner in town, and the lines were up the street for a couple hundred yards. There's the Ticonderoga Beach, Lake George, Lake Champlain, the beaches, the boat launches, fishing terms, bass fishing, very big in this area. Being part of that baby boomer generation, we now feel it's time for us to move on. Both of our children and grandchildren are now down in the Albany area. And that really is the reason that we're looking at selling, and we'd like to move down to that part of the state just to spend more time with our family. Probably, if I looked at some of the things from more words, are strictly a mom and pop type of operation. That's the way we were when we came in. It's probably the way we still are. Someone with computer, internet experience in that probably could grow the business. We have cut it back, relying less and less on the income from the motel. We're now seasonal, whereas when we first moved back here, we were year round. We cut it back. We did some of the rentals with the efficiency and with the one bedroom apartment house. We got back originally to that and just doing that. And now that we are away a lot during the wintertime, we've actually cut that part of it out too. So there is a pretty wide range there in terms of how much time you really want to be in operation. We currently are like April through October, whereas at one time we were really, like I say, year-round type of business. Any questions, I guess? Something that I have to put in.
Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to share? Oh, I heard that some folks might not have been able to hear you very well. I'm so sorry about that. Just talked a little bit low. So Jerry, I do have a question that I'd like to share, only because I was so inspired when I came to meet with you. But would you mind just sharing a little bit about why Ticonderoga was such a great place for you and your family to raise your family, and how you were able to manage that with owning the business?
Sure. We just, again, my wife and I both grew up in the Ticonderoga area. We both enjoyed it here. Through my education and career reasons, we moved away. But after a time, we just really missed being, like I said, just the lakes, the mountains, the people that are here that are fun, the school system that's here. I really can't say enough about the school system. It's a great school system. It really brings the community together. We knew it was good. We went through it and we knew it was a good system. Just a great place to bring up kids. So really that's really what brought us to, I guess, just our knowledge of the town, the surrounding area, and just being able to become an integral part of it. And, we're very happy that we did. And we're going to miss it very much. The interactions you talked with, I'm getting sidetracked here a little bit, but I think worked with about just meeting people, talking to some of the people that come in. I just talked with someone the other day. He's been coming here for 30 years. Has some property on the lake, has a boat, dock there, and it's people like that you just enjoy spending time with. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your story with us. If anybody is interested in following up with Jerry, they can either contact me, they can contact Jerry specifically. I'll send out the real estate listing for his location with some of the follow-up materials as well. And you could also contact Matt Courtwright at the Ticonderoga Area Chamber of Commerce. So Jerry, we're going to just talk a few minutes about some of the other options that are available throughout the area, unless anybody else has any questions for Jerry before we move along. Nope. Okey doke. Great. So there is an option in Indian Lake, New York, the Squaw Brook Hotel. It has an outdoor swimming pool, complete with a screened-in cabana, a coffee shop, a fireplace. And they are a seasonal motel, so that's something to keep in mind. This was publicly listed under a real estate agent and will be again soon. They've just taken it off the market for a little while. It has a home on the property if you're trying to find some place that you can live and operate the business as well. But just as a heads up, if I didn't say it already, the motel does not, the motel part itself is not winterized. So it would continue to be seasonal unless those renovations were made. The owner of this place, Patty, she is interested in chatting with folks about the opportunity and is looking to retire. I should take a moment to say that I'm not going to go very in depth about any of these particular opportunities. It's just sort of like a quick brushstrokes about the kinds of things available, but I would love to talk to anybody about the kinds of things that they're looking for, and we might be able to help connect you with some available opportunities. And my other sort of disclaimer is that we don't do due diligence about how much they're offering it for, or that sort of thing. So you would need to work with your SBDC agent, your accountant, your lawyer, all of those things to do your own due diligence to make sure that the value and what you're getting included is worth the asking price, and also you're getting what you're getting, right? Or you're getting what is advertised. So the Goose Pond Inn in North Creek, that's located near Gore Mountain Ski Resort, really close to downtown North Creek. They have a gourmet breakfast. They're really known for sort of their food in the area. It's a very charming little inn. It's small. It has 4 guest rooms, but each one does have a private bath and queen-sized beds. Some of the older B&Bs may or may not always have an attached bathroom in each of the rooms. So that was one thing that I did want to point out about this particular location. Again, they're looking to retire and find new owners. The Book and Blanket Bed and Breakfast. This one's in Jay, New York. This is kind of a fun one. It's literary themed. All of the rooms are named after after writers. And they have books everywhere from floor to ceiling. I don't know if the books have to come with it or not. That's kind of up to you and them to decide. But this is a great little location in Jay. Again, it's just a couple of rooms, so certainly a smaller place. This one is not publicly available on the market really yet, but please feel free to reach out to me. We can talk about it a little bit more. Kathy, the woman who owns it, she's charming herself, but she's really been works with a lot of artists, is an artist. And so over the years, every year it just has this wonderful group of humans that come back every year who are artisans and intellectuals and musicians who come back and come back. And this is just a place that they love to stay. And she's built a clientele who really is looking for a unique experience. Ordway Pond House. This place is also in North Creek. This one has been running as a rented year-round through B&B, so it's not currently listed as a commercial property, but could be turned into a more traditional B&B if that's somebody wanted to do. It has 7 bedrooms, 2 baths, and this says 2 baths and 2 bedrooms. I also look into, the 2-bedroom and 1-bath cabin as well. On a 10-acre lake, and it's right on the water, which is really a neat opportunity. The Copperfield Inn, so we do have some, like I said, some larger ones. So this is a 30-room inn with 2 restaurants and a banquet hall. It's the only place sort of in the Lake George, not in Lake Placid, but between Lake George and Lake Placid that does have a large banquet facility for events and things like that. So that is on the market as well, located in downtown North Creek. In addition, Lakeview Motel and Apartments in Messina, New York. So again, this has a number of rooms and is a much larger facility. They have a mixed model where they do, they do a motel and events and things like that, but they also have a number of apartments that are rented out year round. And with folks who are working on the dam or other projects right around there. So they have a pretty consistent occupancy rate for the apartments as well that helps supplement their income. Lake Pleasant Lodge, formerly known as the Lake Pleasant Inn, was totally reconstructed in 2003. It has 11 rooms, it's right on the water, and on the site is a restaurant that hasn't been operating as a restaurant in a while, but had been previously and could be restored to have that functionality. So that was just a few of the options sort of very quickly. And so, like I said, there are a number more that I can't quite publicly talk about, but if you are interested in sort of finding out a little bit more about, one's located in a particular area or want to be connected to something that exists in a particular county, please do reach out to me and I'll send that along afterwards of the ways to reach out to all of us. But these are just sort of a sampling of the kinds of places that you might be interested in taking a look at. Or exploring. So one of the other things I wanted to touch upon pretty quickly is that another option is if you already work for a lodging or hospitality institution that is looking to transition, there's a lot of work being done in the North Country and some opportunities for employees to take over in a worker ownership cooperative model. So if it's a larger place that has a number of employees, this might be an option for folks if they're interested in taking something over. You'd have to put less equity in, or you'd have the opportunity to put less equity in if you're doing it cooperatively with a number of other workers, and it can provide the opportunity for shared wealth and ownership amongst a number of people. Or maybe if you're interested in developing a cooperative amongst a few different other inn owners or something like that, that might be an option. So we work with a few different organizations to focus on cooperative development and seeing if we can't sort of build that movement here in the North Country. So if that resonates with you or you have some interest in that, please feel free to reach out afterwards as well. And we can talk a little bit more about that. And whoops, I have, so this is a little bit of contact information here. I accidentally left Russ's name in there from last time too, but so my name is Danny Delaney. The email for the Center for Businesses in Transition is transitions@adirondack.org. We got Russ Kenyon there, but I really was trying to write Mike Bassah, who's the assistant director and our community liaison at the St. Lawrence Chamber of Commerce. I have a little bit of information about our business advisors there. But after this call, I will go ahead and I will send out a few different things that would be helpful for, or I'd imagine would be helpful for folks, including Brooke's info. Thank you again, Brooke, for doing such a wonderful presentation. I'll send out Mike's info as well as my own. I'm going to send out a little survey to see what you thought and to also see, if you think that you really want to learn more and you'd be interested in a longer format program. We just kind of want to gauge interest and see if there are enough people interested in doing that to get that started. We also have an inquiry form. So if you do want to get connected to the Center for Business in Transition as an inspiring entrepreneur and sit down and have a consultation about available options in the region and how to get started on that journey, we have you just fill out an initial inquiry form about that. And I will send out some links to the additional workshops that we're doing through the Center for Businesses in Transition. And so I'll send that all up as a follow-up from this workshop. If anybody is interested in sharing it with folks, I'll also send out a recording of this to you as well. So if you know somebody else who might be interested, this has been recorded and we can share it after the fact too. So I'm here for questions for a few more minutes as well, and Brooke is as well, I think, and maybe if you have some for Jerry, we can just hang on the line and answer any questions that anybody might have, or if you want to just say if this was helpful for you, whatever you want to share.